All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is the monthly meeting on the Committee on Administration for the County of Dunn. We are meeting in room 54 of the county government building. Let the roll call show that we are missing Mr. Zons and Mr. Mike Rogers. However, we do have Mr. Lenow and Mr. Bauer, myself, so we do have a quorum. Our first approval of the minutes from our meeting, and our last meeting was held back in June 27, 2023 in this room. Motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved. Okay, Mr. Bauer and Mr. Lenow. Any questions? Any corrections? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes. Thank you. Public comment. Do we have anyone here from the public? I see no one, and I have no direct public comment, so. All right. Our staff reports, so we receive monthly. If you notice in your packet, all the staff are good enough to give us reports on both month of July and August, even though we did not have a July meeting. Department of Administration, we had a report from our county manager. Any questions on our county manager's reports?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Leon.
All right. Chris, I noticed on the list that you had a chit chat with Bremer Bank, one of the things you did, and I was just kind of wondering what that was involved.
So they came to us and met with Sophia and I and Beata in one to introduce us to their team, because we've been a longstanding customer and there've been some changes for us and them. And then secondly, I think to introduce us to the idea that they would love to have all of our business.
Oh, okay. So I mean, even the PFM stuff and this new company that.
They would love us just to move all our money to them. Yes, I mean, they were doing their job as a business to promote their business. So
Okay.
yes.
So was there anything interesting in regards to that offer that they gave you?
Not particularly anything super anything like very innovative or something that we wouldn't necessarily have. They have everyone has a few little tweaks that they make to how they move money around and what are the proposed advantages and disadvantages to that, but nothing that stood out like, oh my gosh, we're just really falling short by not doing this.
I know that they hold, a few $1 million that we have at this particular time. And I just wondered if they were going to, pop the interest rate or, throw a carrot out there of some sort for us.
So they actually have two pots of our money, and directly and then sort of secondarily. So they have our checking, our in and out account. And then they also our money through PFM sits with Bremer Wealth Management. So it's housed there, but managed by a manager.
Okay.
Am I saying that right correctly, Sophia? Okay.
All right. That was the only question I had. I just saw that you had a visit with them and I just wondered what it was about.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely consider the county to be a, like I say, a longstanding and loyal entity. And I think just wanted to make sure that all was well.
I thought maybe they were going to offer us some zero interest municipal bonds or something like that.
Well, I was thinking maybe they would just give us like 10% on our checking account.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. Good thoughts. Okay. Chris, do you have anything else that you want to highlight or change?
I do not.
Okay, thank you much. Next, in our group, we had human resources, and do you want to There. You want to do that now, or you want me to put you at the bottom of the list?
The actual. So that was just meant to be, provide supporting documentation with regards to the position request.
Right.
And speak to that as part of the budget summary.
Okay, all right, we'll leave that, go
Whenever
till then.
you'd like.
Okay, anything else as far as agenda report that HR presented otherwise? Okay. All right, thanks. Criminal justice. Lots of good information from CJ. You have anything else you want to add?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. You probably have already seen it, but there's an additional budget resolution in the packet. Because we, are recipients of $200,000 extra in a couple of the grants that we have. That cross from this year to next year. So I just wanted to, make you aware of that. That came out after my report was in the packet. So, it's not really spoken to in the written report. So. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where's that 200,000 going?
We're getting the extra $100,000 towards our treatment in jail grant. That supports the substance abuse counselor in jail. And then we're getting another $100,000 for the behavioral health officer. So the Project Hope efforts of deflection and diversion for a 12-month period, split year from this year to mid next year. So a little bit wonky as far as the timing, but good news overall.
Okay. I do have one little comment if I can, for you, Sarah. I had an opportunity to read an article here the other day regarding, our immigrant workforce in the county and in the vicinity. What I was not aware of is that they by law cannot get a driver's license in this state. And I was just kind of thinking to myself, if these folks are doing a very vital role for our dairies in the area and also in meat packing and processing in this particular venue. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, doesn't this people driving around, I mean, you have to drive in this area. It's a necessity. And what I've kind of run into or thought about is that if you have all these people driving around without a driver's license and thereby no insurance, also at this particular time, is there anything out there, some kind of program, for these people? Because it just seems like they're going to get a compounding problem, no driver's license, no insurance. It's going to be a compounding problem for a vital section of the workforce and also clog up the courts a lot with those citations and that type of thing. And I was just wondering if there's any move afoot to, I don't know, offer some type of occupational license or, something like that. If they're DWI or joyriding or something like that, I can understand where all of a sudden we got a problem. But if they're just going back and forth to work, going to the doctor, picking up groceries, it almost seems like we want you to stay on the farm and work nonstop, but you need to fix certain things in your life to have a life. And I'm just kind of wondering if there's anything out there that might address that or anything afoot.
I'm aware of that.
Thank you. I'm aware of that issue that's out there, and I know that there are some associations, immigrant associations working to influence state government in changing that. I don't know how successful they are, but that's one of the challenges that really they can't even get a license in order to drive. We do see folks from all over that are coming into our criminal justice system because of no driver's license or a driving infraction. So we know that are out there in our community. I am not aware of any funding or anything specific to address the need. But you're raising you're highlighting an issue that is been going on and has been going on, and unfortunately it's become so political that we're not seeing much movement from my perspective anyways.
Anyway, I just read the article, but I was not aware that it was against the law for them to get a driver's license or even ID.
Yes, and then you add on the election irregularities and the concerns with people voting that shouldn't be voting. It's become a political issue at this point.
All right, well, if you hear of anything, keep your ear out there. I'd be very interested in hearing more about that if you run into it. That's all.
Will do. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anything else for Sarah? Thanks, Sarah. All right. Collaborate, the treasurer's office. Do you have anything else for us besides your report? Okay, any questions for our treasurer? Off the hook. Thank you. All right, IT, a lot of things going on. Anything else you want to make us aware of?
I guess that would be
Okay,
little thing. So I did just want to give an update because it will impact you as well. So we are in the middle of our migration from Google to Microsoft. So we have moved over about 6 or 8 departments. We're moving the neighbors next Tuesday, which is going to bring us over the halfway point. So we probably have another 2 weeks left of moving over departments, and we will be reaching out to the county board supervisors here early next week to start scheduling some times to be able to do that. So that's been the focus of the department the last probably 2 or 3 weeks. So
okay.
just give you an update on that.
Going smoothly? So far?
Nobody's complained to me.
I haven't heard an uproar.
So that's how we judge these things. So yeah,
Right,
no, I
yeah.
think it's been going pretty well.
Nobody stopped by my yard and said, what's going on?
Yeah. So, all right, that's really all I wanted to update.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Any questions for Dan? No.
Interesting.
All right. Okay, next on our list, county clerk. We had the county clerk's report along with some pictures of some new envelopes. A nice picture of a group of clerks coming in and meeting here. And I guess anything else that you got for us, Andrew?
I would just like to piggyback off of what Sarah said and clarify that we don't have voting irregularities in Dunn County with IDs. So just let's let that lie. No, we will be getting new envelopes. You'll be seeing a budget adjustment coming through probably in September. We did get a grant from the Wisconsin Election Commission to cover the cost of those new envelopes. So we'll have to do a budget adjustment for that. It will cover the cost of the purchase of almost all of the envelopes that we're getting. You can see there's currently a lot of legislation in the works in the report that the Wisconsin State Legislature is currently working through. Many of them, well, all of them are affecting, that are listed there are affecting our office as it relates to upcoming changes for 2024 and election rules and regulations. The only other thing I'll really mention is there is a hearing scheduled for the confirmation. Well, there's a hearing scheduled to move forward the confirmation of Megan Wolf, who's the current Wisconsin Election Commission administrator. That's been kind of you've read the news, that's been a hot button issue with the legislature currently. So that hearing is scheduled for next week. So hopefully we'll have some resolution with that. Her term ended this summer, but she's kind of been occupying that until they do a confirmation and a vote either way. So there's that. Any other questions?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have one, Andrew. I remember last year we had trouble getting the ballots printed and having a paper issue or whatever. I was just wondering if that's going to raise its ugly head again.
Yeah, I certainly hope not. We have been working with our distributor to make sure that they have enough paper product this year, leading into next year. So the supply chain issue from a paper perspective shouldn't be a problem. What will be interesting though is we do have a quick turnaround between the February primary. We most likely will be having a primary in several of the 30 municipalities in Dunn County in February. But what will be interesting is the turnaround time between that and the April election. As you're aware, the April election next year will be the presidential preference. So it'll be a very high turnout for that. There's a potential issue because federal legislation states that military and overseas voters must receive a ballot 45 days before an election. And that's actually, according to the calendar in 45 days before the April election is actually before the primary in February. So there might be some ballots where certain individuals might get an A ballot that only lists the presidential preference. And then after the primary, those individuals have to be mailed a second ballot for the military and overseas that would have the full credentials for what the April ballot will look like. We'll know more about that as we get nomination papers in throughout December and into the beginning part of January. But hopefully there should be no supply issues. If once we go to the budget later on the discussion, you'll see an increase for next year's elections. That is one, because we're going to be ordering many more ballots than normal because of the increase in the participation for next year.
All right, thank you.
Anything else for Andrew? Thank you, Andrew. All right.
Chair Hedlund, I have one addition. We don't have a written report from the Corporation Counsel office, but we do have Assistant Corporation Counsel Barbara Fagan here, and I believe she has an introduction she'd like to do.
Thanks, Barbara.
I do. Yes. So the county board had authorized for the second part of 2022 and into 2023, the addition of an additional assistant corporation counsel position. I think we're on a mighty day 7 with Mr. Christian Farina, who's here. He's running, hitting the ground running, and we're and getting acquainted in county government and all of the wonderful stuff that we do. I don't want to rob him of his own introduction, but he worked in the district attorney's office in Waukesha as a special prosecutor and is a UW-Madison alum.
Go Badgers. Welcome. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Consideration actions to be taken by the committee. Review the vouchers. We have 2 sets. 619 to 718 and 719 to 816. And I just have one personal one that probably, I don't know if it can be answered today, but certainly would just be glad to know.
So before you do that, can I just give you a brief report? I tried to send these, but I forgot because we didn't have a meeting. So let me tell you about last times, because you had 3 questions last time that you've long since forgotten, but I'm going to tell you the answers to. So there was $1,100 a quick trip to Quick Trip from the sheriff's department. Those were their annual purchase for car washes for squads. There was a $514.50 purchase from Talk Point through emergency management and emergency communications, emergency services. And that was for a wireless headset battery replacement, which happens every few years. And then there was a $7,000 septic replacement. And I'm going to read you, or maybe I'm not. I have to think about where I have it hiding. Here it is. Okay. Dunn County participates in the Wisconsin Fund program through the Department of Safety and Professional Services. The Wisconsin Fund is a program that provides grants to homeowners and small commercial businesses to help offset the portion of the cost of repair, rehabilitation, or replacement of existing failing private on-site wastewater treatment systems. 67 of Wisconsin's 72 counties participate in the program, including Dunn. The Land Use, aka Zoning Division, provides assistance to interested individuals in determining eligibility and preparation of the grant. Then the money is sent to the grant, used to cover the cost of sent to the county, which is then used to cover the cost of the replacement septic system. The Land Use Division collects fees for the permits and facilitates payment to the plumber who installed the septic system. This particular system was installed in 2021, but DSPS did not follow up in issuing the grant until this year.
So it was basically late money to pay for the septic system that we fixed prior.
Yep.
And that was on the county nickel until that time?
I'm not sure. It kind of appears that way.
Okay. Now, this is grant money that gives us cash to do this?
Yes.
Okay, and then what would that be under? That, I mean, where would we put this grant money and how much is it that we can use to help people out when they have a failing septic?
I would guess that they submit an application that details the cost, because it
Okay,
would vary from system to system and
so
place
it's
to place.
per issue,
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
not just a block grant that we're sitting on.
Right. No, it said it's a part of the Wisconsin Fund, and then there's an application process for each of the people who need to access it.
All right, well, that's certainly acceptable expenditure in my mind. Thank you.
Okay. I have one, let's see here, is there a date on this? Shoot. Anyway, under the motor vehicle repair 1270 count number, we had a $10,069.37 repair done at Northtown Ford. If that's a series of repairs or if that's,
My suspicion is that might have been that squad, but I don't know.
did we decide to repair it before we tried to get rid of it or?
I don't know. I'll double
Okay.
check.
Yeah, that's what I thought afterwards, after I thought we decided we were gonna replace it and then it'd be somebody come up with some used parts and we said we could fix it or something.
Or it was the installation of all this extra equipment.
That's true.
Not sure.
Switch over from the one to the other. Appreciate that.
So just a question, Vaughn, is
Mhm.
that I'm looking in the first batch of vouchers. Is this the second batch?
Could be, I think it's the second batch.
Oh, okay, all right. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's the second batch of vouchers. And if you go down 1270, it's there's a series of things there for Northtown Ford. And
Okay.
this one stood out as, I'm sure, it's something that was justified, but I just kind of wondered if it was that new squad or do we fix up the old one to sell it or what we were doing with it. Anyway, that's all I had. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I do have a few.
Okay.
All right. On the first batch of vouchers, this was going to be under human resources, under contractual consulting, government jobs incorporated.com, $60,000 expense under under that. And I was just wondering, is that an annual fee? It is.
You want me to speak?
No,
Okay.
that's fine.
Yeah, once a year.
Just once a year, that one is?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so we're basically on a job board then. Through this or what?
NeoGov?
Okay, all right.
That's okay.
Thanks, Barbara. Okay, so that expense is for NeoGov, which is our applicant tracking system, our onboarding electronic form system, as well as where we house all of our electronic personnel files. It is also access to certain job boards, so that is why it's under that government jobs title. As well as our performance evaluation system.
So I can
It does
understand
many
that without
things.
$60,000.
Yeah, so that is a once per year
Okay,
invoice that we pay.
all right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And then, I see, another thing under 110. Contingent fund, University of Wisconsin Stout. I'm just wondering what that contingency is for.
That was actually mine. And that was approved through this committee earlier in the year. It paid for the facilitation for our Economic Development Summit.
Oh, okay, so,
Stouts, planning, assessment, research and design or somebody.
Mhm.
Quality, park, their park department helped us to do that. And that was the fee for the facilitation.
okay, not a problem. And then I think I have one more under, this would be under patrol. Police radio, under it's $1,930 and $890 for Etoximeter Incorporated. Just kind of wondering what that expense is about.
I don't know. I could speculate, but I'll check. My guess is it's breathalyzers.
That's what I kind of thought, or, ankle bracelet or something like that.
Yeah, I will, I'll check.
Okay. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Mr. Bauer?
Just one on Judicial Center on 5101 on the second packet. Ross Nelson, is he a contractor? Do you know, he's got a bill there for $3,016 for the building repair.
I don't know, but I'll check.
Just a name like that alone just makes me wonder, I guess, so.
What was the dollar amount?
$3,016.47.
A refrigeration person, according to
Oh,
Miss Fagan.
okay.
I can see what that would be, that kind of money.
Yeah. Anything else? If not, anyone care to move for approval then with the questions answered? Okay,
I'll second.
all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you all. Consideration reports, resolutions, ordinance to the county board from the Committee on Administration. First item there is approval of the 2024 budget submissions. And we received them from all the groups here. County Manager and Finance, Criminal Justice, Human Resources, IT, Corp Counsel, the County Clerk, and the County Treasurer. Anyone have any questions on those initial submissions for where the budgets stand at this point?
Would you like me to bring them up one at a time? You can take a look.
Sure, just do that.
Okay, so you have two documents in your for each of those each entity. You have a summary page, and I'm going to bring that up. And I'll just spend a little bit of time on this one just because you're going to, you kind of see it the same. Well, let's make these people go away. There we go. Oh, nope, gotta do it this way. So you saw these last year and you have them for the committee administration reporting units. But then when you see, when the budget documents go out for the county board, you'll see these for every submitting entity. I say that because like in various spots, there's more than one kind of group that falls under one umbrella. So you'll see these for everyone. In this particular one, then they're broken out and they give you an idea of how many people are serving that particular function over here, where it says the FTEs tells you who is comprised in that. So this is two people. And this happens to be the full-time county manager and one position request for an assistant county manager. If you'll remember, we talked about this a couple of months ago. So that's one decision, and we'll get to new positions as well, kind of as a roll-up at the end. But so you can see through each of these, here is the financial department, part of it anyway. There are 4.7 staff who work there. It includes the full-time CFO, the assistant finance director, Sarah Stabino, the lead accounting specialist, support staff, payroll. Oh, and a support staff, and the payroll has been moved to HR. So that's the cost for that group. And then you can kind of go on. There's 6 people that are dedicated in the finance department to DHS. There are 3.35 people that are dedicated to the neighbors. There is 1 person that's dedicated to facilities. And then there are 2.85 people that are dedicated to the highway department in the finance department. And then you see kind of the roll up of it all, or the summary of it all. So walking you through from this side, here you have, this is the 2023 budget as it was approved. There was $921,000 worth of tax levy. There was $1.1 million of other revenues. Then these were the salary and fringe costs for this year, 1.7 million. These were the operational costs, 3.29 million. And that led to a total of just under $2.1 million. Then the proposed budget gives you those numbers, shows you that increase is increases that to 2.3 million. And then it says, what is that made up of? And here, so 300 and, sorry, let me step back here. Number 1, this says under change number 1, down here, it says that there's a slight interdepartmental revenue change for financial services. And it's based on the salary and step increases for this coming year. And then there are, in change number 2, it shows salary and fringe costs. And that includes the assistant county manager position and 2 finance department changes of position, moving people into more of a lead position, 1 for highway, and I forgot my notes. Sarah's going to tell me. Where's the other one? Human services. People into more of a lead role to take the lead on those financial pieces. And then you see that change number 3 says, this is the gap. So, here's the gap. This is the change. 3 is a change in operational costs of a decrease in the amount of operational costs from $329,000 to $274,000. And then this is the whole. So, this is from last year to this year, $2,284,666 to $2.3 million is a $261,000 hole. And you can see that that is comprised by salary and fringe and increases for staff and the new position for assistant county manager and 2 changes in finance positions. So you can take these however you would like to. I guess maybe I'd suggest if you want to ask questions as we go, that might be easier. Well, I've got them up since I'm not super adept at moving between these screens. But that's, I leave it to you to tell me what you'd like to do.
Okay, Mr. Bauer? Oh, okay. Mr. Lino.
I just have one question here as I see this deficit under change 3 of 54,664. Is that a position that was eliminated?
She says she has a note. The note says the financial and accounting manager decrease in overall operating budget based on 3-year averages and 2023 projections and operating supplies. So Beata was really purposeful this year about pulling in a lot of historic data to say, how have we typically budgeted? What did we then expend? And then basing numbers on either on those averages or if it was based on something else, noting that. So in this particular case, she looked at the 3 years, the kind of the average over the last 3 years and decided that much less money was needed.
So it's not necessarily somebody's gone.
No,
Okay.
no, these are operating costs. So it would be postage, paper, printing, equipment.
Incidentals then.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Anything else? All right, we can move down if you like.
You say that like it's easy.
Doesn't want to move if you expand the size of it.
All right, let's go CJCC. Sarah?
Stand to the side here just so I can see the screen while I'm talking through it. Okay, so similar layout to what Chris just reviewed for the manager's office. So we've got program titles on the left and then kind of the composition of staffing. So we have myself and a part-time program assistant that are levy funded and operate the CJCC. The part-time position has been unfunded for the majority for this year. We do look to get that position funded as we move ahead. It's not a new position. It's just one that we've been trying to hobble along without. And as we receive more and more grant funding, we have more and more work that needs to be done. So
Did you mean unfunded, Sarah, unfilled?
unfilled, sorry.
Unfilled.
It
It
is
had funding,
it
but it
is
was not.
funded. It is unfilled. Thank you for that clarification. Next program area, treatment court. We've got one full-time equivalent that is 100% levy funded for that program. So really drug testing and staffing go into that program. Next, we have the treatment opportunity program. This one is majority funded through grants. That's our state treatment alternative and diversion grant. Essentially 75% of the staffing is grant funded, 25% is our match that is statutorily required for that program. Moving down, we've got a couple of grants here. Looks like treatment and jail grant, the MAT grant. This is the one that it's split year from October to September. So we did estimate for 12 months, but this is the one we have an additional $100,000 that we're putting towards. So these numbers will be updated, but essentially that's fully grant funded, no match required for that program. The last area there is behavioral health officer. So that is the sheriff's office deputy. That is also 100% grant funded. This is another one that we're receiving an extra $100,000 for the October 1st through September 30th period. And move on to the next page. We do have more funding for the medication assisted treatment program in jail. Some of those funds will be fully expended this year, and then what's ever remaining will be carried over. So we're estimating about $100,000 for medications will be carried over to next year's. And then we have our criminal justice assessment protocol. So we have a full-time employee. 50% of her time is grant funded. The other 50% is levy funded. But certainly an important component to keeping all the programs up and running, getting people assessed and sorted, and providing reports daily to the court. So those are the equivalent. So we're at 6.75 for the office. So kind of incrementally growing through the years here. Not everybody's housed in our locations. You know, we've got staff in the jail and working in partnership with the sheriff's office for both behavioral health officer and the substance abuse counselor that we have in jail. So when we're looking at the budget, this has been updated literally. The second it was printed, we have new numbers. So the round two that you'll see, the numbers have gone up to incorporate that extra $200,000 that we are receiving. But generally the gist is the same here. So while we did reduce our operational costs 4%, the ask still is an increase of $16,000 just when we're talking about the cost of increases with personnel and benefits.
And those are reflected right here. You see that last year, or sorry, this year, the salary and fringe costs for Sarah's group are $687,000. And next year with the way this was built, with a 2% increase and the step increase would be an additional $21,486. But Sarah has monies to absorb some of that. So the end result of what's needed to balance her budget is 16,000.
That's right. And
before you move on, Sarah, may I interrupt here? I just want to go back to the area where injections of medications for participants, and I don't see any, any employee there. Now, when you're doing injections, aren't you going to need either an RN or a CNA, or where's that coming from?
So Chris, if you mind scrolling up to the jail MAT program, that's where the staffing is. So we have the staffing with one grant. And then with a second grant, we have the money for the medications. So
okay.
We have them kind of working in
Person stuff. Okay.
Right. And
Okay.
the medication dollars can be for in the facility or out in the community as well. And since we already have staffing that is managing that program, we need any more staff. We just needed money to run the program.
All right. It just kind of caught me off
No,
guard.
good question. You're paying attention. Thank you.
Okay.
Here I would just note, I guess on this all other revenue line where it does appear that we're having a decrease of 86,000. Again, that's some of our grants are ending, but then we have another $200,000. So that's going to be going up the next time you see this, these sheets.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to address any more questions that you have.
Just one, and I think you basically have answered it, but so the $200,000 applied to the ongoing programs to assist the grants we've already received, and then can be just carried forward in the program year to year until they're expended?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
The only other thing that I just want to say, because again, you'll see it again and again, in this green area that's highlighted in the bottom of the summaries and gives you this sort of, I'll just say the gap between what we have funding for. These this number is not plugged in over here to bring a balanced budget to you, because this is what you have to make decisions about, not you particularly, but in the end, the executive committee will have to make a decision about how to fill that gap or not. Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay.
All right, let's see here. Who do we have? HR, Jenna.
Okay. So just want to start by saying, HR is a little bit different in that we don't really have specific programs per se. But I tried to summarize what we do, within, a handful of categories here. So that's what's listed along the program title column there. So we have, as our main responsibility, of course, recruitment and retention efforts. Similar to how we don't have specific programs within HR, we also don't have specific staff members necessarily dedicated to only doing one thing. So we are kind of spread out, and play a part in a lot of the different initiatives that we do. So you'll see 1.84. That doesn't mean that we have a 0.84 person doing that. I just tried to divide in a way that I thought made sense as far as the amount of time that's dedicated to each area. So we have in total, as part of this budget request, an FTE of 7.1. I'll just kind of go through each. With recruitment and retention, we estimate about 1.84 of our total FTE dedicated to those efforts, as well as within the operating expenses, our applicant tracking system. That's what we had just discussed as part of the vouchers. That is anticipated to be about 17,000 for 2024. We also budget for anything recruitment related, like other job ads that we would place, background checks, fitness for duty exams, or job fairs. So we have 8,500 budgeted for those pieces. And then I also divide evenly our IT expenses across all of our program areas. Our next main function would be records management and classification. So I estimate about 1.33 of our FTE being devoted to this area. And as far as operating expenses, this would include our onboard program, our e-forms program, which is our electronic personnel filing hub, as well as electronic forms processes, as well as our, I have our single sign-on expense budgeted in here, but we work with IT in allowing NeoGov to be a part of our single sign-on process, with basically so employees don't have to log in with their password every single time they need to get into NeoGov. It helps them be able to access it more easily. So we appreciate that partnership with IT on that. We also are responsible for employee support and development. So this is very, very broad, as you can imagine. Estimate about 1.58 of our staff dedicated to that. And the operating expenses include our FMLA source, it's a third-party administrator for our family medical leave processes and compliance. Any sort of labor relations or legal consulting fees are budgeted within this program, as well as our HR staff development and any county-wide training programs that we implement. We have also included an additional sum within this program area of 25,000. That is a change for 2024 that we are requesting. And the purpose of that would be to really drive forward any like the initiatives that we're hoping to bring as part of the new position request that we'll talk about in a little bit. We haven't in the past had any sort of budgeted funds to develop programs for employee engagement or appreciation. So that's always been kind of pulled from any sort of donated sources or anything like that that we've tried to do. So really hoping to be able to intentionally continue driving those efforts forward with the whole bigger picture of employee retention. Also within our department, Patty Isaacson handles risk management and is also the lead on benefits coordination. So you see there where within operating expenses, we budget our premium responsibilities for all of the different liability insurances and things like that. We are anticipating a $12,000 increase for 2024 for the liability insurance premium. And then lastly, we have our payroll. We have one full-time staff that processes payroll. And then the remainder of that 0.35 is a mix of allocation from our HR manager position, as well as 2 positions in finance that help kind of carry out the bank transfer process within payroll and things like that. So to wrap it all up, our difference for 2024 is totaling 56,106 as an added expense. A large piece of this would be due to staff wage increases, step increases, as well as I just kind of want to shed light on the fund balance difference. For 2023, we did have an approved carry forward that won't be taking place for 2024. So that appears to be less revenue. Just wanted to kind of outline that. And then, of course, I had mentioned briefly the added position request for 2024. This would be a request to add a development and engagement coordinator position. A few meetings ago, I had shared our workforce data with this committee as far as impending turnover, as far as where we are now, where we expect to be within the next 5 years. Really highlighting the need for retention and the goal of being able to build culture. One of the pieces of that is looking at the importance of employee development and providing really robust training programs. So that added position would really take the lead on that. As well as providing training on things like how to navigate our health insurance and being able to really maximize on those savings. So in thinking about asking for this position, understanding that it's a big ask, we had sat down and brainstormed ways that we could potentially fund the position. And we're lucky to have conversations and have a commitment from the city of Menominee to pitch in $20,000 towards this position. If we were, would be able to invite their staff in on our training, facilitated training programs. So that would be kind of a savings for them and also kind of help fund our efforts. And the remainder, we are requesting to be able to allow use of $100,000 from the health insurance fund balance. So if you recall, and I did include in the packet that presentation, that really is what I provided a few meetings ago. But it outlined an anticipated savings from 2022 of $1 million. So really what we're asking is to kind of reinvest a really small portion of that savings into a position that can keep driving forward some of that education and that engagement with our benefits, but also across all areas of need within the county, providing leadership and also driving appreciation efforts within the county just to keep building on our workplace culture and hopefully in the end boost that retention.
Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of quick questions as you were speaking. I was just kind of thinking. And when you're quoting us this information on the staffing, do we have the staffing? Is this making the assumption that the staffing exists? Or are we looking for people yet? And this is just a, probability that we'll get these positions staffed?
So we have everything is fully staffed with the exception of the new position request. So
Okay,
if we
all right.
were able to add this new position, then we would go through a recruitment process to fill that. So currently we have full staff in HR, which is something to celebrate. We're coming up on a year of no turnover within our division, which
All right, excellent.
is
And
great.
then the other part of that is that, we're talking about training, for this new position, right? That person will be doing that. Are they going to be connecting up with the university for some of this training opportunities?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. We've started conversations, thanks to Dan's connection to Stout, with a member of their HR team that has already opened the door for our staff to attend some training programs that they put out there. Of course, with a cost. So we're looking to really be able to continue partnering with Stout and the city of Menominee. We know that UW River Falls also has introduced similar training programs to their staff. So there's a potential there to reach further and
Okay.
in working together to
I
kind
just
of
thought,
sharing that cost.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure we weren't leaving anything on the table. That's all. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So again, not to beat the dead horse, but after all things are said and done, things that go up, things that go down, the gap for the Human Resources Division is $56,106. That does include filling that new position in funding in collaboration with the city and the health insurance fund. So a great portion of that cost is actually the other staff salary and step increases. And I should mention, we originally, I'm just questioning myself whether Beata updated all these. I believe that she did. I'm not
The
sure.
wage increase?
What?
4%.
These are at 4? Okay, so these are all gonna come down because we built this originally at a 4% increase. That will come to you next month, I think, for decision, right? I'm looking at you, Jenna,
Yeah.
to the community administration next month that we would approve the benefit and salary package.
Yes, so
Okay.
that would
typically happen in September as part of the updates with health insurance if we have them.
Yes.
Usually they like to have August data before any locked in numbers on stop loss and things like that for health insurance. So I would bring that forward next month.
So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg piece. But we built the original, the summary sheets that you're seeing are built on a 4% increase to a cost of living increase, and then the steps as people move up each year. We subsequently received our market study from Carlson Detman that looked at where we were at with regard to salaries. And Jenna, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. And I would be happy to provide more detail on that as part of the recommendation on the cost of living increase next month. But the market analysis kind of divided we actually have two wage grids, one for general county, the other separate for the neighbors. Divided both of them into thirds and took a look at where we stand with regard to our comparables in each third of the wage grids. So I can provide those basically where we sit compared to our comparables for each third of the wage grid. And in summary, I would say that we are sitting well positioned where we're able to consider a lower recommendation for the cost of living increase than we had originally anticipated.
So we're in the process of reworking all of the numbers to drop that 4% to 2%, which will make a difference in these little green boxes that you see on the side of all of these as those numbers come down.
Right. And just a reminder to the committee that our grid increase for those who qualify, which hopefully most employees do, is 2.75%. So if someone moves from step 3 to step 4, they should receive a 2.75% increase for performance. And then the cost of living is something we like to put on top of that to I guess at least cover the cost of living, considering that the other thing is that employees become a more valuable employee and therefore they receive a 2.75% for that. So that's, we would be a combined of about 4.75 if we dropped to 2.
Yep, you've got it correct. And the other thing about that is there are about 65-ish people that are at the top of the grid. So then they would receive only the cost of living increase. And there was one other thought that I had as you were speaking. Oh, just that we have had an employee engagement, employee work group. What do I mean? We keep thinking we have to come up with a name for it and we haven't, but we have an employee management work group that meets about monthly. And we spent in the early part of this year really working through what was most important to them. And we worked through how cost of living increases were applied. And we went through some sort of complicated exercises and took them through a lot of different things to just really wrestle with kind of what is staff considered the fairest mechanism for looking at how wages occur. And the bottom line is we went through all of that to have the recommendation be that we just continue to do it the way we've been doing it. So, but it was still a valuable exercise because we are really part of our hope was, and this is, I know part of Jenna's Jenna's goal for engagement person, but really is this stuff is so complicated. People don't understand how it works. And so then out of that misunderstanding or not understanding all of it, that's where people become disgruntled or feel like they're not valued or somehow we as in the county are doing this to them. And so really part of the goal of that employee relations group has really been around just having as many people as we can continue to educate. We've spent entire meetings on just how self-insurance works, why it's a benefit for them, for the employee and the fund to be conscientious about those expenditures and just, yeah, and I think it's been really valuable. That group, in my mind, kind of floundered for a long time, but it's been a really vibrant group this year with lots of good questions and a lot of engagement, and they're well-attended meetings. And like I say, their recommendation was that we continue to apply a cost of living increase when that's able to be applied across the board.
And I will say too, I think I agree with Chris. We've been able to have some really meaningful conversations in that group. But I think in order to really do that successfully, to have a position dedicated to hosting more sessions on employee healthcare consumerism and things like that, we've done as much as we could with what we have right now, but we can do so much. We can go so much further if we had the time and the resources to do it. So thank you.
Knowledge is power for the employee.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's it's their bottom line, as well. So.
And that's having been at a meeting when a longtime employee of the company I was working with said, "You've finally done it. You broke my spirit. I don't care if I work here anymore."
Yeah.
And so, we all have to be conscious of that. That you can't just wait until after fact and then drop the ball, boom. Well, we changed that, you'll see it on your next paycheck. Wham. And that's a real serious thing when you have a valuable employee that speaks out at a meeting and says that. And so hope we never get there.
Me too.
And thanks to Jenna and our staff, I don't think we will. All right. Anything else for Jenna at this point? Okay. Thank you, Jenna, very much. Okay.
Let's see who we've got next.
IT. He doesn't need anything.
All right. So mine is set up very similar to the way that Jenna had just explained. These are areas. Just because there's an area doesn't mean there's a person or it's a position or anything like that. These areas are broken up by, if you were to go to a large company, they're going to have departments that do each of those areas, right? So we don't have that. We have a few people that will fit into multiple areas, and I'm sure HR is in that same boat. So I break it up in that way because there's specialties within IT that we have people that can do 2 or 3 different specialties. And it makes hiring difficult. So, but that's where those are broken up. So even as you look at FTEs, the first one actually comes into 1 FTE that isn't 1, that's 2. That's actually there's actually parts of 4 people in that one in order to make it 1. It just happened to, with the math, come out as I kind of did same thing Jenna said. You just kind of figure out how much time somebody is spending in each of these areas, and that one came out even. So that first one is network infrastructure. I could spend hours talking about how all these things work, but network infrastructure is the stuff inside the walls, and the routers, the switches, and the wireless access points that are doing that. So that's kind of your network group. The next part is server infrastructure, and so that is the servers are sitting in a room over here somewhere. Just kind of managing that server infrastructure piece. And so that's also made up of a few different people. The next one is server operating system and application management. So if you differentiate that's the separation between the physical hardware and the actual software. So we have much more staff. So we have 2 people that'll work on that server infrastructure, where about 4 or 5 people are actually working as administering the server pieces. And so that's kind of where that differentiation happens. Next one, cybersecurity, we'll get to that. And I can talk to that a little bit now, but cybersecurity, it's hard to kind of differentiate what is a cybersecurity cost. There's cybersecurity that impacts every single aspect of IT. But some of the items that are broken out there is the time that we spend kind of researching vulnerabilities and doing some of that work, as well as some of the hardware that is specifically your software that's specifically dedicated to cybersecurity. Like I said, that it's very difficult to just say that. So one of the big things that we do as far as cybersecurity is make sure you're updating your software. Well, that's being done by our server application area. So it's hard to kind of break out exactly what that is. So just kind of know there's also pieces of cybersecurity that lives in every one of these specific areas and every single department in the county. So endpoint management, that is managing your computer, right? So we use the word endpoint because phones are also endpoints, but ultimately that's kind of making sure that we're managing all of those. Website and social media, you hear about, right? That's Krista. And in managing that particular area. And then when we move down to these last 3, those last 3 are really the sections that handle our land information division that lives under IT. As we get down to the bottom, it's going to get kind of complex, but there's just understand that there's kind of a separation that happens between those 2 different areas. And I can get into a little bit about that. The Wisconsin Land Information Program, we talk about that. We'll talk about essentially a lot of the grant funds that we get are all part of the Wisconsin Land Information Program to develop IP grants. And then there's also retained fees money that we get from the Register of Deeds or people that bring in things. And that's all kind of handling that land information program. But that's the program that is putting the maps up on the internet for people to be able to see all of that and to keep track of all of the data that's kind of going through there. That's that land information program. Next part, lands record management. I always say that to me was one of the things as you come to the county and you start to realize, oh, there is somebody that actually does that. So, every time one of these deeds comes into to the Register of Deeds, somebody has to look and read those words and turn them into a polygon on a map, right? So that's actually happening. That's our land records people that are reading through that, getting all of that and working with the assessors and getting all of that information out there. That's kind of what's living right in that area. Well, we got the land assessment in there too. Should have one more, rural addresses. So, and then rural addressing is another component of that for every town in the county and some municipalities, all of those addresses are managed by our department. So if you live in one of those areas or your address is in a certain spot, you're working with that office in order to get your address and the sign for that. So that's kind of what's living there. I can go over most of those, but ultimately, when we get down to the summary of where those changes are, there's not a whole lot of changes that are happening there from an operational standpoint. One of the big changes, and it's kind of hard to pull out, but I will tell you there's a $64,000 new operational cost that I'm looking to add this year It is for a system that's referred to as a SIEM. It stands for Security Information and Event Management. The short version of that is all of our pieces of technology. So all of our servers, our switches, and all of the traffic that comes through there is generating logs. So there's logs in all sorts of different places throughout there. And when something happens, we have to go read this log here. Okay, so this person did this, and then it affected this log over here. And then we have to go. So what this tool does is it kind of combines all of those logs into one specific spot. So when this happens, it will connect all of those dots for you. So you can see when traffic came in, when this person browsed out to this web page, then all of a sudden this was installed on a computer, and this is all of those things that happen. So those are the tools that we use to track down viruses or cyber attacks to be able to do that. So that's what that tool is built to do. In addition to this tool, this is through a company that will be monitoring all of those things. So they're going to recognize something weird that happened and immediately tell us and turn off those systems that are causing that. So that's kind of the proactive side of cybersecurity. So that SIEM, that tool will help you be able to track that down in the aftermath if you want to get there, but you can also add on that service that will help be a little bit more proactive in order to do that. So that's the tool. I think we had talked in the past that we did an assessment. We had the state of Wisconsin come in and do an assessment of our cybersecurity posture. And this was the number one recommendation, is to kind of have that log aggregation tool out there so that we can figure out what happened. So, and I guess if you bring that down to if a cybersecurity incident happened, and it's happened to a county in Wisconsin here a couple months ago.
A little county.
Yep. What we would do is we're just going to shut everything down, right? Because you can't get into it if it's turned off. What a tool like this will allow us to do is to know exactly where it is. So instead of shutting down the whole county, we say, you know what, I only need to shut down this department, or I only need to shut down this building, or I only need to shut down these few things. And so now we can keep 90% of the county up and available and feel confident that we haven't been attacked in those areas, and then go fix that problem if we weren't able to avoid it to start with. So that's kind of the beauty of what that tool is. And that's why we want it. So it's $64,000, and it's an ongoing expense.
If I may, so is this something that we have to have two of, one in a secure location, one that's working, that type of thing, backup, that kind of thing?
No, well, I mentioned it's a service. We are actually going to be shipping our logs to
someplace else.
To someplace else,
Okay.
so that they have them and then they deal with that.
Okay.
So
All right.
it's one cost to us. Yes, there's probably multiple copies and redundancies built in at that third party, but on our side there isn't.
And the organization that we would get this service from is somebody we work with already?
It is
Or-
not.
It is not.
They are kind of the biggest, or the most, they're the darling of this industry right now.
Okay.
As you look around at the company that we're looking at, we often go through a recruitment or a process, but what we're looking at is a big company. And if you were to go talk to the cybersecurity people in the state of Wisconsin or the federal government and say, this is what we're looking at, they say, yes, that's what you should do.
All right.
A big county would, your Dane County, they have 8 people in cybersecurity, and they have 3 people dedicated to doing all this work. We're not that. We can't do that.
Yeah.
Right. So this is really buying the service that's doing this 24/7 monitoring of systems.
All right. Well, let us know when that new widget shows up.
Well, it'll just be a box with flashing red lights. So So it's I always say I can give you a tour of our server room, but it's a bunch of servers that are just flashing red lights and
Okay,
the excitement.
thank you much
wears
for
off
your
quickly.
expertise.
So, yes, the fun's on the inside when you log into it. So, to break down the rest of this summary, you'll notice that this one, mine has a lot more rows on it than a lot of the other ones, and that's because we have a couple of unique funds, and we've changed the way that we're doing them from year to year. So you will see, in my right words here, in the revenues, you'll see a fund balance of 500 and some $1,000 last year and nothing this year. That 530 some $1,000 is our computer replacement fund. So that's a carry forward request. We don't do carry forwards as part of the budget. So you're not seeing that happening at this point. So that's where it looks like we're making $500,000 less in revenue. No, we're just not doing it yet. So that'll also kind of move forward in that time. But that's also something that we've changed the way that we're going to do that. So we're trying to avoid having to do that carry forward request for these funds that are what is the word? I want to say earmarked, but they are assigned, right? Is that the yeah,
For the special fund,
yeah,
they are,
allocated or assigned or
they are committed.
So ultimately, as you see the audit report and they do the whole, this is how much of your general fund, this will not be included in that spendable general fund because it is committed for that. So it won't be a part of this, that carry forward in the future. So that's why you see a little bit of the change there. And we also have our land information, those retained fees funds, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but that's that money that we get for every record that comes into the registry of deeds. Those funds are required by statute to be used for things on our land modernization plan. So that money also can't go back to the general fund to be spent on a highway project. They're intended to be spent on a certain thing. So that's another one that we just kind of manage. So you'll see that's another one that happens with that carry forward, but it also is something that we give back as an expense. So you see the change there for intergovernmental charges. That is the amount of money that the different departments are giving us for the computer replacement. So that's kind of that revenue source, but it's not really revenue. It's the departments giving us money. So they're budgeting it in their budget and then they're bringing it in here. So, and that's kind of the change that we're making from last year to this year is how we're budgeting that money kind of through the process. I think next year, this will become a lot more clear. It's that change between how we did it last year and how we're doing it this year. And this has all been run through auditors and we've been spending lots of time trying to figure out how to manage these funds in a more clear way. Oh, this is a really small screen. So I guess the final piece of that is where you see the change in operational costs of 24,000. I told you that that's a $64,000 increase. So that's just offset by an actual decrease in operating funds as well as that increase. So when I say we have 64 more, it's actually 24 when you kind of factor in a savings of 30-some thousand dollars. Then the final thing to bring up is our grants. The grants and the retained fees are two of our external revenue sources in our department. Those grants are based primarily on the housing market. It isn't good. So we are expecting revenue that has been extremely high in the last few years. If we talk about the retained fees, so the money that comes through the register of deeds, we were in the $60,000 and $70,000 a couple of years ago. We're expecting that to be in the high 30,000s. And that's just the number of people that are refinancing a house, buying a house, different things like that. Those numbers are going down, revenue goes down. The other piece of it is the grant. The grants are essentially intended to say, if your retained fees are less than $100,000, we'll make you whole. But they do it on the state schedule, which is behind ours. So the grant that we're receiving next year is actually based on July of 2022 to July of 2023, which includes some good times. So we're getting less grant because we were seeing good times, even though we are in bad times. So next year that grant should go up because of the low from 23 to 24. So kind of the perfect storm of low funding. So that leads to those particular areas they pay for salaries for some of our land info folks. So as that money goes down, the levy ends up picking up more of their salaries. So that's where that lost revenue is coming from. And
So
why.
the summary, the green box really reflects increased salary costs for all of the IT staff, that 2% or that 4% as it's written, but it'll come down a little bit. And then the cybersecurity package for 64,000, and then the decrease in revenues related to those grants.
And a decrease in operating expenses.
And a decrease in operating expenses. Yes.
So, yes. And there's a summary on that. I think it's on the first page, but yep. So kind of complex as you get down to that. And we spent a lot of time going through this, and I have the most complex one, register of deeds too, but so that's kind of the basis of that. Any questions? Did I confuse everybody? Yeah. You add a lot of numbers together and subtract a lot of numbers in order to get that. And it's hard to get them all out there.
So just out of curiosity, those grants, when they do come in, they're not like 2 years late. They're coming in within the fiscal year, right?
Right, but they're based on, so we know what they're going to give us.
Oh, all right.
Now but we'll get it next year because it was based on as soon as
But
July.
it's based on 22, even though we get it in 24.
22 to 23, July to July.
Okay. All right.
So now that is ended, now they come out and say,
Now
this is how much you're gonna get. Yep. So we're pretty good as to know what we're budgeted for on that grant.
All right. But we will get the money, right?
Yes.
All
Yep.
right.
Yeah. So that's all written into statute, how that whole program process is managed and where those numbers come from. So
Again, thank you for your expertise.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Okay, Corp Council, if you would please.
Obviously put together the budget, but
Microphone?
as Mr. Dunbar turned it up. Nick obviously put together the budget, but much like HR and some of the other departments, we don't have programs that we're engaging the public with. And so unlike Mr. Dunbar's department and some others, it's a relatively simple kind of configuration. So kind of going backwards from what my predecessors have done today, starting with the green box, that the current projected deficit of just over $23,000. That is based, as Ms. Corpola has noted, on the 4% increase. Almost the only addition in money from year to year is salary and fringes. The additional assistant corporation counsel position had been budgeted for all of 2023 and approved by the county board going into 23. And so that, although we're welcoming Mr. Farina today, isn't an uncontemplated change. When I look at the actual breakdown of the percentages, salary and wages seem to have gone up between the 4 different positions, 2 assistant corporation counsels, a corporation counsel, and 1 legal secretary, approximately 6% total, and that is both the 4% and step increases. And so that will and that, like I said, goes basically the entirety of the 23,000 and some budget deficit. So that will go down to a degree. The rest of our budget is, besides obviously the salary and fringes is the bulk of our budget. The budget does list a grant, and the grant is really our main revenue. And that is, so the child support agency is what's known as a 4D program, and 66% of attorney time spent assisting the 4D program in their implementation of their program. So drafting, reviewing legal documents, going to court is reimbursed by the federal government and the state government to the child support agency, who then transfers money to the corporation counsel's budget. And so that has been a pretty consistent amount every year that we've been able to depend on, just over 25, between $25,000 and $30,000 is generally historically what it has been. The other thing I was going to point out is that there is a decrease in revenue. It didn't necessarily go straight. We sell properties that we take through INREM, and historically we have been able to promote those properties. I have gone out and shown the properties. We advertise properties. We have them on our website, and it's actually a big part of our week to week workload is asking questions about the INREM foreclosure process and selling those properties. There was a change in Wisconsin law that has recently occurred that we're just starting to kind of see the financial impact in. Wisconsin Act 216 requires counties to hold on to any excess after the cost of listing the properties and paying back taxes, interest, and penalty, hold that for 5 years and make efforts to give that to the former landowner. And so that has an impact on the corporation counsel's budget as well, because revenues that we would otherwise be able to show you as far as successful sales, sometimes $100,000 has come up in years past. More often it's less. These tend not to be, the Ritz-Carlton types houses. But that isn't a revenue that we can count on anymore. And so I wanted to bring your attention to that as well. So the ultimate, what everybody kind of holds their breath for, that'll go down a significant amount, because it'll be 2% instead of 4%, but otherwise everything is pretty consistent from last year.
If I can, what was the legislature's idea on making this change?
So it was the big push was from real estate agents in the eastern part of the state, southeastern part of the states. You would see a lot of billboards if you were in that part of the state. The idea was that it was a cash grab from homeowners that really, could use that money, and real estate agents that would really like to sell the properties instead. I think potentially in that part of the state, there was a different type of house that was being foreclosed on than we have experienced here. Generally, these houses are in great disrepair, lots of porting and things like that I've seen when I tour them. So it was to get money towards the promotion was to get money towards the real estate agents. It was who was running the campaign. Historically, and I think that there might have just been some confusion, frankly, historically, we would allow people that if it was their homestead to make a claim for the proceeds. And so that was always a part for homestead, but your hunting land, sorry, that you can't have a claim for that. And now with this new law change, not only is it homestead property, but you also have 5 years to request it, but also your hunting land. And so we'll see, it isn't this amazing market change to the budget, but it will have an impact.
And so that'll impact your budget dramatically from what I see here.
Well, dramatic in the sense that we don't have a whole lot of revenue coming in. We only have revenue really coming in from the 4D budget and that. So one of our 2 revenue sources is eliminated.
Wisdom in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to just take a moment because the Corporation Council budget has the clearest illustration of this. And you'll see this in some of the summaries as you work through the various departments. You'll see that in 2023, we had a fund balance applied. Sometimes that was situations like Dan referenced where we applied some of his savings, the IT replacement fund. But more often, what we had done last year was we utilized our general fund balance for some of our salary increases. And this, we realized that that's not a sustainable thing to do, because if you borrow from your savings account 1 year, you're going to have to borrow from it the next year, you're going to have to find another source of funding. So this year we've moved that. So you'll see the fund balance applied number is no longer in most of these budgets. And now it's actually the tax levy increase. And then all of that rolled together gives you this, again, this deficit. But you'll see that fund balance applied, and there have been questions about that in some of the meetings that I've been in. So that's what that's about. Last year, we applied general fund balance to meet our salary costs, salary increases. You look like there's going to be a thought.
What I'm pondering in my mind in regards to this, but wasn't there a big move afoot to help our legal department, so to speak, but district attorney, judges, that kind of thing, but it really doesn't impact corporate counsel.
There had been a big push in the state legislature. I believe that Ms. Nodoff had spoken to it, and the state public defender, in order to increase the state public defender.
Yeah.
And that's defense matters, mostly for criminal matters, though certainly my world sometimes has defense attorneys, and to increase the base pay for assistant district attorneys who are state employees, not county employees. And so it has frankly very little to do with our budget, except for, as Jenna might point out in some other situation, when if other attorneys and people in the profession are making more money, then, then it might impact eventually the market analysis, but nobody's making that argument right now with this budget. And ultimately, everybody that gets those benefits from the state is very excited about the increase, but it doesn't come into our world, right?
Okay. All right. I kind of thought, wait a minute. That's all. Thank you.
All right, county clerk. Do you still have Andrew with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So on the first page, it's some pretty standard things that we're doing year after year. The only difference is that you'll see there will be a $95,120 budget deficit, based on the increase in funding needed for the elections for next year. Having multiple larger elections, the April presidential primary, there will most likely be a February primary for the spring elections, an August primary for partisan elections in the fall, and then, of course, November being the presidential election. We need a lot of ballots, and we need a lot of equipment a lot of election materials to make sure that those elections can happen. So $70,000 roughly of that increase of the $95,000 is based on election material needs, and the about 23,000 is a request to add a part-time person to this office. The Department of Homeland Security has categorized county clerks and election related entities as critical infrastructure for the functioning of government. So we're asking that we have a part-time, half-time employee added to the payroll for 2024. This is partly because as the county, we administer the elections for the 30 different municipalities, working with the 30 municipal clerks really closely. And there's going to be a lot of absentee ballots to track. There's going to be a lot of components to put together all the complicated ballots for spring, especially. Last spring, there were 101 different ballot styles in Dunn County alone, and that doesn't include the different supervisory districts that will be up, adding an additional component for complexity for the number of ballots for each municipality. So with all those factors, we are trying to bring up the staffing level for the county clerk's office to reflect similar sized counties and their county clerk's offices, to make sure that we can have office coverage. And as the county clerk, I've been trying to get out to a lot of the municipalities to do additional training. With 2/3 of our municipalities using Badger books, there's going to have to be some additional training this fall as well as next spring. So I need a little bit more flexibility for office coverage to be able to go out and do those trainings. So that's the nuts and bolts of it.
Any questions for Andrew?
Elections are expensive.
They're expensive.
You think that they'd have to reimburse us some money somewhere, federal or state? That doesn't happen.
No. Well, thank you, Andrew. I guess, I don't know if you either have us stunned or we're just, or we just,
Being weary.
very wary, but, no, I can see where it is, and like you say, you know, your budget is not real complicated, but it certainly is an area that just tremendously fluctuates.
Right. So from this year's budget with 2 elections to next year's 4, and then 4, big elections, it's quite a big fluctuation year to year. So it's hard to do year to year comparisons in our office because of those changes. But yeah, thank you. So thank you. If you've got additional questions, feel free to reach out and let me know.
All right. Thank you much. Okay. Treasurer's office.
All right, I will do my best to make mine short and sweet as well. So the treasurer's office consists of, I broke my time down similar to IT and HR. So I really put in the time that we spend doing these specific tasks. So as you know, the treasurer's office collects all the property taxes for Dunn County. We print and calculate all of the taxes for Dunn County, as well as do the daily financials, investments for the county overall. So my office consists of myself, who is full-time, my deputy, who is full-time, and then we have ideally 2 part-time folks. Terry has been with us for about 2 years. And then last year, the board approved that I hire a half-time administrative clerk as well. After 6 months of interviewing, I made 2 offers. I still don't have anyone. We kind of piecemealed team together for tax collection again this season. So part of my request for next year's budget is to actually change the two part-time clerk administrative positions to deputy clerks. The work that we do daily and overall, those part-time folks are really a integral part of what we do. And an administrative clerk is really kind of an entry-level position. It's basic financial things. We have to reconcile all the accounts. We have to do a settlement with all of the clerks and treasurers for 30 municipalities. It's really in-depth work. We work with corporate counsel regarding tax deeds. And I just feel, after doing a ton of research, looking at other elected official offices, that really reflects more of what we're asking those folks to do. So that is something that I've sent forward. So that is changing a wage from currently $19.26 to $23.43. Plus they get in lieu of fringe because they're a part-time person. I've spoken to my representative in HR that I work with, kind of talked that over to see if that seemed feasible, what I was asking for, and they agree. I am also hoping that because of that ask of a wage increase, that we will hopefully get people that apply and really want to work here. I was really hopeful on the two people that we had made offers to, and it didn't work with part-time. The wage is decent, but we're asking for a lot of flexibility. The part-time people have to increase their time when it's tax season to sometimes 40 hours a week, and then we pull back in other areas, so it's very niche. So it's been difficult to hire someone, even though I think we're a great office to work in. So the numbers are pretty basic. Any increase is going to show the step increases for the full-time full-time deputy as well as the part-time. As an elected official, we negotiate every 4 years, so mine don't change, whether there's a automatic increase for the county or it's more than what I get. That's just what I stick to. And then the other two part-time people offer us a little more flexibility in our office with two full-time people, vacations, coverage, things like that. Our window as an elected official always has to be open. If Dunn County buildings are open, we are open. So that big snowstorm last year, we're still here. Just because that's part of the statute. We have to be here. So to have that extra coverage is always super helpful. But the really interesting part is, if you scroll down, I have a surplus, mostly because of the tax money we bring in. And this year you'll see in my overall budget that we have had great interest regarding our investments. So we're just trying to make hay while the sun is shining, as they say. So that's all I have. If anyone has any questions at all.
Yeah, which I think is probably a good idea, to change the status of those departmental people to, assistant clerks or not assistant, but
To deputies.
deputy.
Yep.
Is there additional training you would want to send them to?
I'd have to look into that. Really, we would be asking more of them. Right now, it's Angela, my deputy, and I are really doing all of the heavy lifting, and then we're maybe asking them to clear accounts or something like that, but we'll have the opportunity to really spend the time and train them to be able to help with that workload. And then that gives us the opportunity to, update our processes, which right now we don't have the capability of doing. We're trying our best, but just to make our office run smoother and for the taxpayers, as well as all of the departments in Dunn County. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Any other question?
Nope.
I guess not. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.
That was such an eye-popper, though.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, we're down to 71G, which is a summary of the new positions and expansion requests, and you have actually a written summary included. Are you gonna take care of this?
This is just a roll-up of all of, as you heard.
This is just a roll-up of all of those. I don't think I could, oh, I can almost get them to fit on one page. All of those positions, the new positions. So I think that it's very fair to say that, and this will be kind of part of what we'll talk about when we get together on Wednesday, but it's very fair that I think that we could summarize the operational increases into the additional monies that Andrew needs for elections and a little bit of additional IT security, cybersecurity monies. I don't think there's any other significant operational changes. Dan, you've been in this as much as I have. Is that it? I think that's it. The other pieces of increase then get dumped into maybe some small revenue changes, but mostly into then the salary increases, and the new positions. So these are then a summary of the new positions, the changes in the, finance department of making 2 additional people more in a managerial county manager role for highway and DHS, assistant county manager, engagement and development coordinator. The county clerk half-time position and the treasurer's change of those 2 positions to make them deputy clerks. So let me go back and talk to you for a minute about this assistant county manager position, just because I do think that it's an area where there's a potential other resolution to this. As we've talked and cognizant of the funding, the funding picture, one of the things that I've tossed around with speaking it through with Jenna is essentially withdrawing the request in this sense, but setting aside some funding. I'm just going to throw out a dollar amount. I'm going to say $25,000, but I think we could cost it out more specifically, to essentially add assistant county manager responsibilities to an existing department head. And then leaving, so a little bit of that $25,000, some of that would be to pay them a little bit more for those additional responsibilities. But then the other part would be to give them a little bit of backfill that they could maybe make a lead role out of something to give them some capacity to pick up some extra responsibilities. So, so I, as the committee overseeing, the Department of Administration, I lay that out there as an opportunity. It feels fiscally responsible. I don't know exactly how it would work, but I mean, I think we could sort out how it could work, and could eliminate a full-time position. I mean, we could fill a full-time position doing that, but I think that someone in an existing role, say, I'm just going to pick, let's just say that the health department, public health director she could then, happens to be she, but she could then move some of her responsibilities to kind of a lead role, and then maybe free up a quarter of her time to be able to do some assistant county manager type responsibilities.
Just question for you, Chris, at this point. Do you see that yourself, a way you would like to move forward and possibly work it? Or do you feel that maybe even in a special administrative assistant to you?
I've thought about that. I think that the types of things that come to my mind in terms of areas that I need, that I need or we would benefit from help on are really taking that leadership role in some things. So we have a number of initiatives that we're working on. As I've mentioned in previous meetings, I have found it really, really valuable to be at all of the committee meetings. Be honest, to say it would be nice to kind of split that out a little bit, and maybe even if I, even if we, so if it were, say, and I say this because I don't believe that the health director would be interested in being an assistant county manager, but never asked her. So let's just say it was the health director, then she would be able to take the kind of take then health and human services and the veterans and like that piece of it. Maybe there are some other, maybe the neighbors of Dunn County, maybe there's just some natural fits of spots where depending on the talent of that and area of interest of that person, then they could take over those oversight of some of those, kind of be the first go-to for those departments and committees. But the kinds of things that we're working on, I just see as higher level than necessarily, I think we're doing fine with navigating our way through, sort of the administrative support piece of it. That seems to work okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions on what we're looking at here in terms of that summary? Anyone have any suggestions or questions about any of those proposed positions? No.
Well,
Mr.
yeah, if I may, are we gonna be going over a lot of this on Wednesday then also?
No. Yes and no. How's that for a good answer?
Okay.
So our goal on Wednesday is to, we've done some work to pull aside, essentially to say, I'm just trying to think of the most succinct way to say this, essentially to say, these are areas, so you can spend time talking about whether or not the corporation council should have an extra, I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
$15,000 for their salaries or not. But that wouldn't seem to be a very effective use of your time. So we lump all of those salary decisions into sort of one bucket and say, yay or nay on, and you're not going to be deciding, but we're going to say, but we essentially said, here's the salary piece of the gap, if you want to say, between what we have and what we need. And then we say, here's the operational piece of what we need. Here are the new positions so that they're separate to talk through, because they are significant together. They all add up to across the county about $600,000. And then here's some potential ways that you could think about funding these things. So you won't see all of this information again, because we've really just narrowed it down to the departments that have either new position requests, significant operational increases, and there really aren't. There's about $300,000 of operational increases across the county. And then what am I missing?
If we
New
are looking
positions.
at $300,000 worth of increase, and do we have it available through the levy?
Well, these are the things that are in addition. So what you'll see when we get to Wednesday, I'll give you a breakout that essentially says, here's what the total of the salary increases cost. Here's the total of what the new positions cost. Here's the total of the operational and any operational increases. And then the other big pot, obviously, are highway projects. So.
Not so them either.
So that you can trying as best that I can to give it to you simply, and then we can always go deeper. There's a plethora of information that we can drill into, but really just saying, and if here's how government is funded. We have fees and billable services. We have grants and state allocations. We have tax levy. We have some state aids and the vehicle registration fee and those, the shared revenue. We have those pots of money. And then we have available to us use of fund balance and borrowing. And here's your ways you can fund things. And here are the things that you need to make decisions about funding. So you could say, we're going to fund all of the salary increase at 2% or 10% or 0.5%, or, kind of, and not that the Wednesday meeting will decide that, because that will be the work that will come both to this committee as well as the executive committee in the next month. But just to kind of start to lay the groundwork as to here's the way it's funded, here's the need, and then here's some possible ways that you meet the need.
All right.
Any other questions on that summary information positions? Okay. Move down to number 2 under that consideration of reports, and that is the 2023 administration budget adjustment for HR.
So can I just take you one step
Oh,
back?
sure.
So you actually, it was the will of the executive committee that the standing committees would actually approve the budget submissions of the departments.
Okay.
So
that's right.
you've heard all of those
Yep.
from the Department of Administration, County Clerk, Treasurer, Corporation Council, all come before you, and in whole or in part, if you would make a decision about approving those.
You want to do it as a whole?
Rather than break it all out at this stage of the game?
Yep.
I would say at this point, break it all out. I mean, we'll have to figure out how to pay for it some other way,
Yeah.
and then fine tune or
Okay.
whittle down whatever's got to get whittled down.
Okay.
We don't do that anyway.
No,
We don't do that anyway, do we?
no, it just our question before us is going to be, do we want to approve each of these A, B, C, D, and so forth separately from the department requests that we've heard? Or do you want to vote to pass them on as a group at this point?
My preference is to pass it on as a group.
As a group? Okay, all right. All right, need a motion then to do so.
Moving on with the group, I'll.
Okay, all right, okay, motion to move all of the presented budgets forward.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lina. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes. Thank you very much. So all those that we have previously heard are moved on. Now then, that take care of it, Chris, for,
It does.
all right. We have before us the administration budget adjustment for HR. And this is gonna be Jenna with her presentation on that.
So this is really exciting for me because it's not very often that HR can apply for a grant and be asking to accept grant funds. But the state of Wisconsin Department of Health Services had presented a grant opportunity basically to incentivize employers in the state of Wisconsin to host on-site blood drives. So they provided an opportunity for employers to receive $25 per employee blood donation. So we applied for the grant, and we were able to receive a $25 amount per employee donation for the blood drives that we hosted in January of this year and also at the end of July of this year. So it's not a very large amount, but we have been awarded $1,150. And our intention with those funds is to help fund a portion of our employee picnic. So we're taking those funds and then giving them back in the form of employee appreciation. As I had mentioned earlier, we don't have a budget for those types of efforts. So it was a welcome surprise that we had this grant opportunity. I don't know if it's going to be something that they'll do every year, but we'll definitely keep an eye out. So we are just requesting this budget adjustment to accept these funds into it will go into the health insurance fund, which is where our wellness initiatives dollars are located.
And, I guess, I want to say shout out that, so to speak. That I think is really good you did it. And I would hope, they would do it in the future and hope that would be an additional incentive to know that not only are these people donating blood, but are also getting money back into a fund that can help them too. And so, if it's just the picnic, great. You want to say just the picnic, but I mean, that's something everybody can enjoy, so.
Ton of fun.
And special shout out to Supervisor Bauer for grilling the meat for nearly the entire time.
And his
We really
lovely
appreciate it.
and his lovely wife who had no obligation to that.
To be there, but did.
Yeah, that's the middle.
All right, thank you, Jenna.
Fabulous flipper.
Yeah. Okay, so I would gladly make that motion to accept the $1,150 grant money. And that would go into the what was that, not the health fund, but the
It does go actually into the health fund.
health
so-
and wellness fund
Yep.
there we go, health and wellness fund for the county employees. Second,
Second right here,
okay,
right.
there, second by Bauer, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Very good. Yeah. Always fun to have something new, especially when it's receiving money. 2023 budget adjustments, CJCC, there were 2 of those. And the list was long. Thank you, CJCC. And it's never too long, Sarah.
I had some help from finance there, so they're good at their work. So the first budget adjustment is really to accept the additional funding that we have for 2 of our grants, the medication assisted treatment in jail, we're getting an extra 100,000. And the law enforcement deflection and diversion, we're getting another $100,000, but those are split over 2 years. So we're looking to apply $95,000 of that funding to this fiscal year. And that really is to continue those programs and the staff that are already in place through the end of the year. And then the remainder of the funding, that 105, is going to be added to our budget for 2024. Otherwise, things would end September 30th of this year.
And what was your other one, Sarah?
The second budget adjustment is to accept an additional award. We received more than expected for our state DHS medication assisted treatment. So this really is that medication dollars. So just looking to recognize that additional 2748 towards that program.
Okay, is that what we call the MAT program?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, someone care to make a motion to accept and spend those funds?
So moved.
Hmm? For both. Is that right? Is that all right with you?
Yes.
Okay,
That's fine.
all right. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Thank you, Sarah, for the good work and allowing us to continue on the good work. All right, proposed revision to civil service ordinance.
So we are going to postpone this item. Originally, it was going to be an effort to do some rework of our existing civil service ordinance, particularly with regard to hiring in the sheriff's department. As it sort of working its way through. I think the revision ends up being more significant than we thought, and somewhat significant pieces of it can be rescinded and laid to rest. So there's another month needed in order to pull that all together.
Perfect, thank you. All right, down to our next meeting date, September 28th, 2023.
I
That'll
think
be-
that date is actually wrong, to be
Yeah,
honest.
that sounds
I think there are must be five
5 Thursdays.
Thursdays in September, because I just told somebody that our next meeting was going to be on. Yes, oh no, it is actually the 28th.
He is the 28th. Okay.
So the question would be, though, our audit has been taking some time. With the first year with the new audit firm, they're really being diligent about tying out accounts and making sure that they have a very solid starting base and aren't just following what happened with the last firm. And so it's taken a lot more time. I did have some correspondence with them today, and because to this committee before it goes to the county
Right.
executive and county board. Or county board, actually. So one option would be for this committee to meet before the county board on the evening of September 21st, I want to say. 20th?
20, is it 20th? 24th? 20th, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Would be for us to meet at, I think, whatever, maybe 5 o'clock, I don't know, to hear that report of the auditors before then it would be able then to go to the county board that same evening.
Okay. Okay.
So I
Yeah.
leave that as an option. Otherwise, we can push it back again. It could come to you on the 28th and then go to the county board in October. But my preference would be that you hear it sooner than later and they hear it sooner than later.
Yeah. I'd be willing to go early.
I am not going to, but the WCA conference is that week.
Mhm.
So would they be gone? I mean, it's gonna be.
No, actually, I think that conference is done, I believe, on Tuesday
Tuesday
afternoon.
Right.
Yep.
I'll just have to drive a little sooner, faster to get back from Canada. I'd say not Canada, very northern Minnesota. Oh, but that should be, do you want to do it at 5 and then have a little break, or do you want to do it closer to the start of the other meeting? I know Chris has got lots of things going on.
I mean, I would say it typically takes maybe, would you say a half an hour, 40 minutes maybe, to hear that audit report?
Yeah,
But it's
about that.
6 o'clock,
Yeah, probably.
all right, and then you wouldn't have. to
So,
do-
so in other words, instead of 3, 6.
Well,
This would be a special meeting
this would
for,
be just for, do it just for
Yes.
that,
For that, okay.
right?
because you'll
And
have a
then we
fair
have
amount
to-
of business in September, looking at the benefit information and, making a final decision about the wages and all of those sorts of
We don't
things. So
wanna
you'll
get
have some.
to a push where we weren't, to get our meeting
the whole
done
budget.
in time to get to the, to
Yeah.
the board meeting. So I think it would just be a special. So I mean, if you came at 6, lasted till 6:40,
yeah.
you're here or could be,
Mhm.
5:45 or 5:30 or whatever you think. Any ideas?
I'd be open anytime, I think, that day,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, Wednesday.
I'll be just back from the conference.
You're talking about Tuesday or Wednesday before the board meeting?
Yeah.
Wednesday.
That'd be Wednesday then.
Wednesday,
Yeah.
the next day.
Cause you'd have time, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And like I said, for me, it'd be later the better, but whatever it is, I'll be here. So,
Probably just schedule this meeting, the committee administration meeting next door, just so
Yeah.
that the board room will be set up and people can come in and start to,
plus,
really then have the full hour.
right, so somebody doesn't, well, then it gets interrupted too. They walk in and, then suddenly you leave that's planning to stay. All right, let's do, what do you think? Is 6 too late, Chris? Did I push you too
I don't
much?
think so. I think that would be
All right, let's do
sufficient.
6 o'clock. special meeting.
And that'll be what date?
September 20th.
6 o'clock, yep.
And then the second question related to that is, do you have objection to the auditor appearing remotely, or would you like them here in person? I know the last couple of years, April did things remotely, but that was their question and I said I would ask.
Worked well with Zoom or whatever. it seemed-
Yeah, but I
You
mean,
can-
if they're
or you
gonna
can-
be here anyway, right?
Yeah, we can go.
I won't be here anyway.
No, they won't.
So I mean, we're questioning is, do we want them allowed to use Zoom for that meeting? and
Right,
not
they would
here
do
personally?
both remotely. If they do one remotely, they'll do them both remotely. Otherwise, they would come in person.
Doesn't matter to me.
Whichever more convenient for them, I would.
Okay,
I
they
think-
come from the eastern part of the state, so if we
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't need to pay them to come
Yeah.
from the
Right.
eastern part of the state,
Right.
that's probably
That'd be
advantageous.
probably an
And then
advantage.
Dan's
and-
giving me the signal like I'm forgetting something, so.
You hold a meeting over there, we take the technology and move it over here.
Oh, he wants one.
And then we'd have to move the technology back.
Can we not do it with, can we not do it with an owl or an eye?
In audio, I don't think you'll need to record it because the same presentation is gonna have, but.
And in another hour?
So as long as they will have a hard time hearing you without good microphone. You'll be able to hear them fine.
We can funnel questions through. Yeah, I think we'll be okay.
So next door,
Next
that'll
door,
fly. All right.
At 6 o'clock, that'll work for you. If not. Okay, with everyone? All right, so for this committee, our next meeting date is actually gonna be moved up to September 20th, 6 o'clock, special meeting, presentation of the audit. And then we will also meet on the 28th here at 3 o'clock. And that will be for our standard monthly meeting. So you'll have 2 meetings coming up. Any announcements other than that? We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Andrew, thank you for being here via Zoom, and every department head who has been here and made the presentations. Thank you.